Yeah, certainly. It's important. So let's talk a bit about this center. I'm going to read a blurb here, and I'll let you expand on it. But this is coming from the Mid-America website at midamerica.edu. The Center for Missions and Evangelism is a new initiative at Mid-America Reformed Seminary designed to enhance the current MDiv program with a greater missional emphasis where appropriate, as well as developing a new set of classes, conferences, cohorts, and internships focused on areas of evangelism, church planting, discipleship, and foreign missions. It is our hope and prayer that in doing so, we may help the church raise up the next generation of faithful church leaders to serve faithful churches, as well as help plant new ones at home and abroad. Now, that word missional there in the paragraph, that's come up many times in the board in terms of what is meant by that, and it's quite succinctly explained as, well, we mean Great Commission. So we're talking about Jesus' words to his disciples in Matthew 28 and seeking to equip the church to do those types of activities. But Eric, could you provide for us just a broader sense of what this center is, what you hope that it could be? And we can get into a bit of the background of why such a thing might be needed among Reformed seminaries.
Yeah, so the Center for Missions and Evangelism came about in a certain sense as the culmination of two different conversations happening at the same place, kind of swirling apart from one another, that eventually intersected and created a momentum that led to the birth of the center. One with a handful of ministers that would often just seem to run into each other at conferences and different events related to subjects of missions, evangelism, church planning, those things, and just basically recognizing that while obviously a lot of the Reformed seminaries have an emphasis in one fashion or another on missions and evangelism, and things like church planning, at the same time, there's room for more. And if you look at the general MDiv curriculum at most seminaries, they all tap these subjects, but they tap them pretty minimally. I don't mean that critically, but just in general, some obviously emphasize them a little bit more than others. A couple seminaries have ventured something along the lines of what we're doing, perhaps focusing on one slice of this pie, say church planting, or something like that. But if you're asking the question, where do you want to send a guy who's interested in pastoring a congregation, there are a lot of really good answers. If you begin to nuance the question and ask, where would you send someone that you want to learn more about doing church planting work, or someone who's preparing for the foreign mission field, then not only is there the question of classroom curriculum, but very important, the question of mentoring as well. And the Center for Missions and Evangelism at Mid-America is, number one, not trying to pretend that it's the best thing out there, but it is trying to speak into an apparent need or void by adding to a seminary curriculum additional classes in the areas that we're talking about: church planning, evangelism, and missions, but also mentorship opportunities whereby we might connect a man that's considering going to seminary with a view to one of those fields, not just the pastorate, but also church planning or the mission field, and then pairing him along the way with someone who's done that particular work. So someone who's done the work of church planning, someone who's been on the mission field, and in a certain sense, creating stronger glue between seminary and internship program, or seminary and mentoring. My skill set is very minimal and unimpressive. I have, by God's grace, planted a couple of churches and really love evangelism. But so many of the things that we contemplate being embodied in the seminary will rely on the skill set of other people. And so it's sort of like building a dream team of, if you're thinking about the area of foreign missions, who are the servants out there that have done really good work that we might be able to pair with people who are contemplating doing similar work. Same thing with church planning, other aspects. So there's sort of a four-legged stool in the Center for Missions and Evangelism. Classes being added to the seminary curriculum are one part of it. Cohorts are another, and this is pretty important, where men might be able to come together like local church leaders in an area, and there's maybe one topic on everyone's mind that they want to get together and just bond and pray together and discuss something. So maybe they would invite in a speaker. That speaker may or may not be me. It depends on the topic. Quite likely it could be somebody else for all kinds of good reasons. But they would be able to get together and I'll play with the phrase safe space and just talk together about these things, pray together, have a beer, pizza together, and just good fellowship in the gospel. So cohorts are invitation only. Conferences, like we're going to do in St. Augustine next month. By the way, St. Augustine is in Florida. St.
Right.
Augustine is in heaven.
That's right.
So that's probably the only actual helpful thing I'll say here.
And for sure, we know Florida is not heaven. So I'll just.
Some may disagree. Apparently, everyone's trying to get there. It's the new Exodus location. So anyhow, you have the classes, you have cohorts, and then conferences like we're doing in St. Augustine are a event to which we would invite all kinds of people to come. Anyone could come. So conferences, anyone can come. Cohorts is more of a small gathered group, more invitation only. But conferences, again, are just trying to speak to the questions of the day. Today there's a context that shapes the way we do ministry. There are certain challenges right now in ministry. There are challenges to establish churches. There are challenges to planting churches. I've commented and many times recently, the attrition rate right now is really sobering. More pastors have quit in the last 2 years than in the last decade combined. And sure, that's attributable to things like COVID, social justice dynamics, abuse narratives, and just fatigue and exhaustion in ministry. So those questions shape a certain sensitivity now, and cohorts or conferences might be a way of serving local or gathered churches to that end. So 3 legs of the stool: classes, cohorts, conferences, and then finally would be the mentoring internship program. And every seminary has required field hours. At Mid-America, they have a ministerial apprentice program that overlaps with what we're talking about now in terms of trying to connect guys that seem uniquely interested, possibly gifted in church planning, with someone who has already done that work and might prove to be a good mentoring pastor. Some of the NAPARC denominations, OPC, PCA, URC, varying degrees, have different internship programs or requirements. More and more, what people are recognizing is that seminary can do a good job of laying the foundation for what a man may need in ministry, but there's so much that really has to be caught and cannot simply be taught. It needs to be modeled. It needs to take place through active discipleship. And we're simply trying to forge those relationships with some of those that have already gone before and done the work, enabling what may be the next generation rising up to do the same well.